Welcome to my Commander Decks for Beginners series, where I make the most basic possible Commander decks using cards that are very low on text, very easy to understand, much simpler than a Precon, but still at about the same power level of one, all at a budget price, in this case under $60, including basic lands. And I'm real excited to bring you this deck tech, because this is probably the most powerful beginner deck I've made so far. I'll explain why in a bit, but first, let's check out the commander. Niv-Mizzet the Firemind is a 4/4 legendary dragon wizard for 2 blue, red. That's a total of 6 mana. He's got flying, and whenever you draw a card, Niv-Mizzet the Firemind deals 1 damage to any target. Tap, draw a card. This deck really focuses around that whenever you draw a card trigger. So we have lots of card draw in the deck. One of the things I like about this deck is we have several paths to victory, and this is one of them. Because not only can Niv-Mizzet deal his damage to creatures, but he can deal it to players too. So if our opponents are at low enough life, drawing cards can finish them off. Although earlier in the game, it's often a better idea to kill your opponent's key creatures with this ability. And note that when you draw a bunch of cards all at once, like Overflowing Insight, which draws target player 7 cards, you can spread that 7 damage around any way you want. Aside from these instants and sorceries, a lot of our creatures draw us cards too. Some when they enter the battlefield, some when they die, and some that you have to pay a cost to draw, like Archivist, which taps to draw a card, or Fairy Formation, which lets you pay 3 and a blue to create a 1/1 fairy creature token with flying and then draw a card. A lot of these activated ability draws can be done at what we call instant speed. Anytime we could cast an instant, we could activate this ability. This allows us to wait until the most opportune time. A good example of this is combat. We want to see if our opponents are going to attack us or not, and if they do, we can activate our draw abilities and maybe kill one of their small creatures. Let's go over a couple of the more wordy card draw cards. Neheb Dreadhorde Champion costs 2 red for a 5/4 with trample. Whenever Neheb Dreadhorde Champion deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, you may discard any number of cards. If you do draw that many cards and add that much red, until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. Now, normally when you get mana, you have to use it up before steps and phases end, otherwise it just vanishes. But this card allows you to keep that mana until the end of turn, mostly for the purpose of casting spells on your second main phase, which comes after your combat phase. Now, if you don't use the mana by end of turn, it will still vanish. Spellbound Dragon costs 3 blue-red for a 3/5 flyer. When it attacks, draw a card, then discard a card. Spellbound Dragon gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the discarded card's converted mana cost. For example, if you discard Hover Barrier to this, the dragon's going to get +3 attack because its converted mana cost, which Magic now refers to as mana value, is that 2 colorless plus the 1 blue for a total of 3. Storm Surge Kraken costs 3 blue for 5/5 with hexproof. Lieutenant, as long as you control your commander, Storm Surge Kraken gets +2/+2 and has whenever Storm Surge Kraken becomes blocked, you may draw 2 cards. Hexproof means that it can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control, making it kind of hard to get rid of. Body of Knowledge costs 3 blue, and its power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your hand. You have no maximum hand size. Whenever Body of Knowledge is dealt damage, draw that many cards. Normally in Magic, we have a maximum hand size of 7. That means at the end of your turn, if you have more than 7 cards in hand, you have to discard down to 7 cards. With this guy out, or any of the next 3 I'm going to show you, we don't have to worry about that, and since we're drawing so many cards in this deck, this can come in handy. Triskaidekaphile costs 1 and a blue for a 1/3. You have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have exactly 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. It also has pay 3 and a blue, draw a card. You're not going to win the game this way very often, but it is a cool thing the deck can do. Alright, I think it's time we talk about what makes this deck so powerful. Besides being able to win games with combat damage, or from Niv-Mizzet's damage-dealing abilities, or from Triskaidekaphile every once in a blue moon, the deck can also win with combo. We have 2 cards that combo with our commander to basically draw our whole deck and deal just a whole bunch of damage to our opponents. Curiosity and Ophidian Eye both say whenever enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. If we enchant Niv-Mizzet with this and tap it to draw a card, Niv-Mizzet can deal 1 damage to an opponent, which causes Curiosity or Ophidian Eye to draw you a card. Then you deal a damage, and you draw a card, and you deal a damage, and you draw a card as many times as you want. Be mindful, you only have so many cards in your library, so it's not truly an infinite combo, and if you run out of cards, you do lose the game, so don't do that. But if you do this at the right time when players are at a low enough life total, you can knock players out of nowhere. Another cool combination of cards is Basilisk Collar or Gorgon's Head with Niv-Mizzet. Either of these give equipped creature Death Touch. That means any amount of damage it deals to a creature is enough to kill that creature. So with this equipped to Niv-Mizzet, his 1 damage he's dealing to a creature is enough to kill a creature of any size. And lifelink on the Basilisk Collar means that when it deals damage, you gain that much life. We can't always count on having our commander out, so we have some cards for redundancy, cards that do a similar thing. Niv-Mizzet Perrin costs blue, 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 red, red, red for a 5/5 that can't be countered and has flying. Whenever you draw a card, Niv-Mizzet Perrin deals 1 damage to any target. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. This works just fine with everything I've mentioned prior. Psychosis Crawler costs 5, and its power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your hand. Whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. This works great with the deck in general, with how many cards we're drawing. However, it does not work with the combos that I showed you, because this is loss of life instead of damage, which is a subtle but important wording difference. Other cards that trigger when we draw a card include Orniophage, which is a flyer that when you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Chasm Skulker, when you draw a card, put a +1/+1 on it, and when it dies, create X 1/1 blue squid creature tokens with Island Walk, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Chasm Skulker, and Island Walk means they can't be blocked as long as the defending player controls an island. Nadir Kraken, whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on it and create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. And the Locust God, flying, whenever you draw a card, create a 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying and haste. Pay 2 blue, red, draw a card, and discard a card. When it dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. Some of our removal cards also draw us cards, like Fateful Showdown for 4. It deals damage to target creature or player equal to the number of cards in your hand. Discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many cards. And don't forget, with our commander out, our card draw spells kind of turn into card draw plus removal spells, so that's nice. And a few board wipes for when things are just not going our way and we need to clear the board. We've got a bunch of mana rocks in the deck to try to get Niv-Mizzet out as quickly as possible. Feel free to check out the full deck list if you want to see all of them, as well as a few cards that I didn't cover in this video. Before we're done, I really have to warn you about one thing. Some people hate combo decks. It's not everybody, it's a small percentage of people, but some people really hate that, especially when it's a card that combos directly with your commander. If you build this deck and you find that people hate playing against the combo win thing, you could just take out those 2 cards. The deck will function just fine without them. It will be less powerful, but it'll still be a fun deck that can absolutely win games. If you'd like, you can check out my other beginner deck techs. I'll leave a link to the playlist in the comments. And if you appreciate the work that goes into a video like this, hit that like button. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.